bipartisanship seems rather old-fashioned. Joe Biden was very fond of the word. Well, he's yesterday's man now, or will be in a few days' time. And he's going to disappear largely.
Now, here on Pina and Friends with Tim Montgomery, Rachel Cunliffe in the studio with me. But let's look at American politics. Plenty going on there this afternoon and this evening, still going on. And our trusty guide at times like this, Sarah Baxter's on the line, who's director of the Marie Colvin Center for International Reporting. Hello to you, Sarah.
Hello, John.
Hi. So look, the Pete Hegseth confirmation hearing. How's that been going?
Well, it's been pretty raucous, actually. He got a lot of heckling when he first arrived at the Capitol, and he has been grilled by Democratic senators. But the fact is, he's also been cheered by Republicans. And as a former Fox News presenter, he's pretty good at articulating his case. But he's had some very uncomfortable moments over his attitudes towards women in the forces, in combat roles, on his past allegations against him for sexual assault, which really made him squirm, and on a host of other issues where he has some reputational questions to answer.
Yeah, I mean, the drinking in the background, treatment of women in the background, handling of money in relation to a veterans charity, that's in the background. There was a time not long ago when people thought Pete Hegseth could scarcely get through this confirmation process. Now, it's not thought that it's a certainty. There seems to be a certain amount of betting that he will get through. Is there anything going on that you've seen, Sarah, in the Senate confirmation hearing that suggests that there may be any kind of crack in the Republican Party ranks? Because it would need that to stop him.
It certainly would. It wouldn't take many people to crack, but somebody's got to. And actually what I'm hearing is the complete reverse. So people who started off very, very skeptical of Pete Hegseth's nomination, such as Joni Ernst, Senator Joni Ernst of Iowa, who's always stood up to defend women against sexual assault, for example, she apparently declined to meet with the accuser, who has been roasted by Republicans for remaining anonymous. So, but of course, when people do come forward, we've seen that before in confirmation hearings for the for the Supreme Court, the women who come forward with sexual assault allegations often end up totally roasted themselves. So, but I think that it's seen as an important virility test to get Pete Hegseth confirmed. The conservative right, the MAGA crowd have really rallied behind him, as have Christian conservatives. He's got a Christian tattoo on his body, which some people associate with white nationalists, but others just see as a fervent, sign of devoutness, etc.
Yeah, but he's been lobbying on Capitol Hill furiously, hasn't he? And anyone with showing any sign on the Republican side of standing in his way, in the way of his confirmation, well, they've had the saber rattled at them by the MAGA faithful. The idea of maybe facing a primary, stopped from running again when that opportunity comes around. They're really twisting arms, and maybe it's going to pay off for Pete Hegseth. And that's so important, as you say, Sarah, because if Pete Hegseth gets through, there are lots of other appointments waiting in the pipeline. Suggestion is they may just get through too, just as easily.
Yeah, the big question mark remains over Tulsi Gabbard as Trump's pick for Director of National Intelligence, which seems extraordinary on the surface of it because, she's been rather friendly with Vladimir Putin and President Assad, the deposed President Assad of Syria, which was awkward timing for her. But even there, what Donald Trump wants, Donald Trump is getting at the moment. And we need to be clear about that. He did lose somebody. He lost Matt Gaetz, who was a really egregious appointment as Attorney General, given allegations against him and dislike among his colleagues for Matt Gaetz. So he went down in flames as the choice for Attorney General. And after that, Trump drew a line and said, that's it. I'm not going to have any more of my appointments questioned. And of course, the sort of things that they're being roasted over, which is sort of too much wokeness, even allegations of sexual assault. The critics have been accused of too much wokeness over, small matters like alleged sexual assault. And it's not going to happen. Trump is the guy in the driving seat, and he won the election. America is his at the moment.
Ever since that election, the story's been a picture of dominance, of triumph on Donald Trump's part.
Totally.
Rachel Cunliffe and Tim Montgomery here with me in the studio. Tim.
I hear what you say, Sarah, and largely agree with you, but I think I'm right in remembering a survey recently that said that the most conservative Democrat was now sort of more liberal than the most liberal Republican, and vice versa. And it used to be the case that there was this crossover between the parties of people who, had Democrat or Republican leanings in the opposite. But all that sort of middle has vanished really in both the Senate and the House because of kind of ganging up on Joni Ernst that we've seen that recently, after she made her initial standout against Hegseth. Kirsten Sinema, the independent-minded Democrat senator for Arizona, she didn't last long because she didn't really fit the culture of her party. And it just seems that to be an independent voice now in American politics, it isn't just a Trump phenomenon. It's a phenomenon of money and primary challenges on both sides of the aisle that are stopping that sort of independent voice existing in American politics at all.
Well, you are absolutely right, Tim. America is much more divided. And of course, because it is so split, not exactly 50-50 as we've seen in the election, but something close to it. These congressional seats are so close, that if you don't herd, you get thrown out by the herd. So and the polar extremes are sort of drawing people together. So the people who are on the up in the Democrats, in some ways, are the populists. Yeah. And on the left, and of course the people on the right are the populists on the right who are very much aligned with Donald Trump. And a lot of those more moderate Republicans actually left Congress at the last election. One thinks of Mitt Romney, for example, who not that long ago was a presidential nominee for the Republicans. And of course on the left hand, we've seen Joe Manchin go, very centrist senator for West Virginia, and as you mentioned, Kirsten Sinema from Arizona. I think increasingly the Republicans are all united behind MAGA now. They've got to be, or there's no future for them, at least in the short term in the Republican Party. And the Democrats, though, it's a much more interesting debate opening up as to how much you cooperate and continue to operate what used to be bipartisan norms when dealing with Donald Trump, given that he does appear to be extremely popular in America, or at least with at least 52% of Americans. So there is a tug towards the center there, which it remains unresolved. We haven't really seen the gloves come off yet in the Democratic Party between the two sides.
Yeah, Rachel.
I just want to pick up what you said there about bipartisan norms, because in a previous era, some of the candidates for cabinet positions, including Pete Hegseth, there would have been Republicans having real issues with some of their past records, shall we say. And what you have basically said, and what seems to be happening, is because they're Donald Trump's picks, they're going to get through, and it's kind of a little bit for show going through the hearings, because we know that the Republicans have the numbers and therefore they're going to get voted through regardless. Do you think that it is just where American politics is now, that the idea that Congress has a role in pushing back against the president or in scrutinising presidential picks and presidential decisions, regardless of party, that's kind of a bit old-fashioned and not really appropriate in a post-Trump world? I mean, you mentioned Matt Gaetz dropping out. So I think he had 8 days that he was Trump's pick for Attorney General, and there was some suggestion that Trump had just picked him so that if he fell, all the other ones would get through, because at least Matt Gaetz hadn't. Actually, looking at what's been going on in the hearings, the impression I'm getting is that if Matt Gaetz had stayed in the race, he would also have been appointed to his role based on the current numbers. Or am I reading it wrong?
Well, I think Matt Gaetz had his own problems with his colleagues in Congress, which were a mixture of personal dislike as well as political concerns. So he was vulnerable, more vulnerable than most. But I think you're right that bipartisanship seems rather old-fashioned. Joe Biden was very fond of the word. Well, he's yesterday's man now, or will be in a few days' time. and he's going to disappear largely unmourned, unfortunately for him. So yes, we're in a new era here. It doesn't mean that Congress can't flex its muscles, but it's going to pick its fights very carefully. And Exhibit A is what happened to Liz Cheney, who was a rising star in the Republican Party, very much a scion of the right as the daughter of Dick Cheney, and she has no role whatsoever anymore in public life, in Congress, having stood up to Donald Trump after January the 6th.
Tim.
You mentioned Joe Biden. Can I ask why you seem to think the relationship between Biden and Harris seems to have got so bad? You know, the pictures at Carter's funeral last week, where the Bidens didn't acknowledge the Harrises at all. It seems to be pretty established now that there's very frosty. What is it? Is it something that Biden thinks she got rid of him? Was it he didn't think they ran a good campaign? What's the reason for why this relationship does seem to be so poor now?
Well, we've heard Biden actually express openly that he thinks he could have won if he had remained the candidate, which is frankly delusional.
Exactly,
yeah. But he and his wife, Jill Biden, seem to think that, and therefore resent Kamala Harris for, frankly, straight out of the gate, being much more popular than Joe Biden was. You know, what everyone thinks about the latter half of her campaign, she came out and electrified Democrats who had been absolutely cast into despair by Joe Biden's dreadful performance at that debate, where his declining faculties were so obvious.
Yeah.
So, but, you know, presidents don't get to be presidents because they're just nice guys. They're extraordinarily vain. They can be stubborn. They're very ambitious, even once they've reached the top. And he did not want to cede an inch to Kamala Harris, and frankly did nothing much to help her.
Seems so petty towards her. They're so petty.
Well, they're all egomaniacs, aren't they? If you can't run for president without being an egomaniac.
Oh, you do have to be delusional to imagine that Joe Biden, I think, could remotely have a chance of winning that election. But taking the view that resentful view, clearly shared by Jill Biden, who till the very end seemed to share that view, it does kind of also feed in to the argument that Kamala Harris was a terrible candidate. So she'll resent all of that, I think, in a kind of a great big massive resentment. And as you say, the Democrats are going to have their reckoning about that. They've got time to have that reckoning. Just lastly on the dominance of Donald Trump, even today's report by the special prosecutor who said he resigned from the Justice Department a few days ago, Jack Smith, who said that he had found clear evidence of criminality on the part of Donald Trump seeking to overturn the 2020 election, that he inspired his supporters to commit acts of violence. That was the report, and he felt he could have got a conviction in the courts. That report's come, that report's gone. Absolutely damning, but it's blown away on the breeze of Donald Trump's sheer dominance.
Well, Donald Trump won in the highest court of the land, which is the US electorate, really. That's a huge jury that decided how they felt about that case. It's not clear that Jack Smith has come up with absolute smoking gun, killer new facts.
Yeah.
So that's why people are slightly rolling their eyes. The fact is he's been comprehensively defeated. I think he's probably a very good man who did his job as well as he could. But this lawfare against Donald Trump has totally backfired on the Democrats. Yeah. And it's the ultimate defeat today with, the release of what now seems like a pipsqueak of a report after the event. Yeah,
probably worth pointing out that if it was a jury, it was a majority verdict that got Donald Trump where he wanted to be, and quite a close one. But in any court, that will do. Sarah Baxter, lovely to have you on. Let's talk again